Okay, I'm going to use this lucky mic that Chamath used. Maybe we'll all be great investors. Again, at the end of every one of these plenary sessions, we just want to know that the speakers get really manhandled. So what we're going to do today is the speakers after the sessions will be taken outside for a few minutes so they can actually interact with you. Okay, but we do have many more things to go here, so hang on. Okay, so one thing I want to do is this, I think, is my 7th or 8th year at NPC, and it's been a fantastic journey, starting with a few hundred people to now a few thousand people. And one thing I want to point out in particular is what we did last year. If you remember, there was a speaker, John Wood, who was the founder of Room to Read, and one of the things we did there was to say if everybody tweeted about Room to Read, that we'd donate $100. And we were able to donate, I think last year, $10,000 to Room to Read. So thanks to all of you who are there who tweeted. The second thing, and more very important thing now, is also, if you remember, last year there was a project that I brought over here called the Diwali stamp in the US. And I asked all of you here in the audience to help promote it and to lobby for it. And so one of the things I want to say thank you to is we do have a Diwali stamp in the US now. Okay. And here it is. And it was a 3-year effort, and the organization that I started called Indiaspora really helped with this effort, helped the community to get it. And we finally have this, and you can also get it in India, I believe, if you want to order it on Amazon or something like that, right? Okay, so that's that. So next on the docket is a speaker, again, much like Chamath, who came to it, I think 3 years ago, and he was running a very small company at that point in time, which has now become a unicorn. We're delighted to have Kavin, Bharti, Mittal today. As you know, he was here, I think it was 3 years ago, we'll have to ask him. But now he has 100 million users with 40 billion messages being exchanged every month. And to interview him, his story is a fascinating story, is Syna. Dehnugara, okay. I mean, I live in the US, so I'm not as used to Indian names, sorry. She's a features editor at CNBC TV 18. She'll be moderating this session, so take it away.
To John Wood's Room to Read in that sense. So wonderful to be here with you, Kavin. When were you here last?
A few years back.
Few years back?
Yeah.
And what was the conversation then?
We were just starting up.
We were just starting up.
But we had gotten a lot of traction early on, so I think Ravi invited me to come and talk, and so we gave a small sort of talk. So, yeah.
All right, so we'll talk about the startup journey a little bit, and I think what we'll do is I'll start with some questions and we'll talk a little bit, but I'll open it up for the Q&A fairly early so that we can make it interactive and have all of you participate early on in the conversation. So you came here 3 years back. The company was founded in December 2012, and if I've read this correctly, the first set of users for Hike actually came not from India, but from certain parts of Europe and the Middle East. Why was that? And put this in the context of the discussion that we are having today on building a consumer-centric product.
Yeah, you know, what was interesting was a day after launch in December 2012, we were #1 in Germany. 2 days after launch, we were #2 in Middle East. And we didn't know what hit us. And it turns out that one of our engineers had sneaked in 128-bit encryption over Wi-Fi. And these countries are very, very paranoid about privacy and security. So that lasted about a month. We actually had a couple of 100,000 people using the app every day in Jan 13 outside of India. But we were building for India. It was very unusual, but we still had 0 in India, by the way.
Okay.
So that was an interesting time.
So when you look at this, Kavin, from the lens of building something that's consumer-centric and you know, that really serves the consumer, you hit upon a jackpot of consumers in a completely different part of the world that really cared about that one particular feature of Hike, the 128-bit encryption that perhaps other messaging apps at that point of time didn't have. And over a period of time, how have you kind of built this customer centricity into all the features that you've been building into Hike now for an Indian audience, 100 million odd registered users. Yeah. Hopefully you will tell us how many active users as well. Soon.
Yeah, you know, it became very clear to us that the Germany-Middle East buzz would not last long because 128-bit encryption over Wi-Fi was trivial. But if you look at our journey, it's been less than 4 years. So it's still a small baby company. But one of the things we've realized over the last couple of years is the only way to fail is to build stuff people don't want. So find out what people want and build that. And I think that's what we've done enough to succeed so far in the last 3.5 to 4 years. And our approach has been very unusual. Unlike other companies in our space, we're the only social product today out of India, which requires a very different approach to how you build products in this market, given that India is a country of 20 countries, there's so much diversity, cultural diversity, language, and so on and so forth. So to build stuff that people want, you really have to understand humanity very, very deeply. Because what's common between the US, China, India, Japan is that we all have people. We all have human beings. And human beings have needs, but those needs can be served differently depending on the environment. And we understood that. So we spent a lot of time just figuring out what people, how people were living their lives in this country.
All right. So tell us about some of these features. And when Kavin says that he's up against other social messaging apps, he's talking about WhatsApp, he's talking about Facebook Messenger, he's talking about Line doesn't have much of a presence in India, but the biggest messaging app in Japan, and now Google Allo, you know, so it's all coming in. The big players are, you know, kind of already here in this space. So what gives Hike the edge? What is that insight that you have about the Indian customer, the person who uses your app, that you believe the others don't?
So
and how have you gone about finding it?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So we've had incredible amounts of competition from the day we launched. Not long ago, people like WeChat and Line were pushing very heavily in the market like India.
I know, full page ads. I remember
full page
that.
ads, TV ads, spending tens of 20s of millions of dollars, which was more than enough funding for the year at that time. And of course, now Tencent is a partner. But competition will come and go. The question is, do you really understand how to serve the needs of people very specific to this country better than other people can or not? And we are real believers, and you can see this trend globally now, that each country has 2 or 3 very big messaging applications. One that does super simple messaging that replaces SMS. But
the WhatsApp.
In our country, it's WhatsApp, and globally too. And there is also a second messaging application that starts off with the youth that does much more than simple messaging. You have 3 of them in the US. You have iMessage, Messenger, and I think Snapchat. You have similar ones in Europe. We spent some time in China last month. Okay. There's QQ and WeChat. QQ has 800 million users in China. And it's a very youth-focused application. People don't hear about it because it's a very China...
More youth-focused than WeChat?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
And they call QQ the youth-focused application in China, and WeChat is the one for older people.
All right.
And they also have 600 million users in China. So in every market, you have this divide. Because at the end of the day, especially in a market like India, there are a couple of differences. There's 1 billion people coming online for the first time in their lives on a mobile device, onto the internet. Second of all, there is a lot of social structure in this country. And it has been scientifically proven that a generation that grows up on the internet is quantum leaps more liberal than a generation that does not.
That didn't, right.
And so you have this large youth population that's fairly liberal, much more than the older conservative population with a lot of social structure in this country. That itself is a humongous insight, and it's been one of the reasons why we've been successful so far, because we've had a huge focus on privacy, for example, in the application. We let people choose who see their status updates and last seen. We launched something called hidden mode in the application that lets you hide certain chats in the app. And it's very interesting. We had this insight because by spending time with tier 2 and tier 3 sort of youth. And smartphones today still are shared in a household. And kids don't have privacy.
Right.
And it is stuff like this, which is spending time on the ground, that gives us a huge advantage when you're building messaging as a platform. Yeah.
All right. So you brought up WeChat, so I'm going to take the conversation in that direction. Your latest round of funding came from Tencent and Foxconn, $175 million. That last round took you into the league of the unicorn, so you're now valued at $1.4 billion. Does this put a lot of pressure on you to kind of accelerate the story that you perhaps had planned out for Hike in terms of rolling out features, in terms of introducing sort of newer innovative applications within hike, which is something that you've started doing. Is that partly led because of your synergies now with Tencent, the company that also owns WeChat? And how much of the direction will be your own and how much of the direction will come from your investors?
So first of all, it's never been a more exciting time to be at Hike, because now we have the capital to accelerate our vision. That's why we raised so much money. And it became very clear to us that India is going to take some time to come online. Today, we still have only 180 million internet users, out of which 100 million people are real internet users. So the market is still very small. So it's going to take 4 or 5 years for 500 million good active internet customers to come online. And we wanted partners who understand that this is a very long-term game. And also understand that it's okay to monetize in another 3 or 4 years because they've already done it and seen it, which is why Tencent becomes a great partner. So also the reason why Tencent invested in the business is because they understand the vision. They understand that messaging will play a huge role in a market like India as it did in China, but maybe in a different way, something we seem to have cracked so far.
Right, so in what ways? Talk to us a little bit about the newer features that you're now introducing into Hike. I believe only this morning you rolled out a video chat option within the app itself, negating the need to move from one app to the other on your phone.
So one of the things we launched with fanfare last year were local keyboards. We had 7 languages in the keyboards, and while the initial interaction was good, it never lived up to the expectation of, let's say, stickers in the application. Today, people exchange 300 million stickers per day across 40 different languages. And we realized something very interesting, which was most people don't understand local input because there's no QWERTY standard in Hindi, Telugu, Malayalam keyboards.
All right.
So it sort of gave us this insight that India is what we call a visual or sight and sound market. Most people post 100 million users are much more comfortable speaking and talking sort of face to face, what we call sight and sound, than chatting.
Also because it's difficult to type in local language.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not
Same finding as in China, it was difficult to type Chinese characters on smartphones.
Absolutely. And early this year in Jan, we saw something very interesting. We saw 2G users start to decline for the first time.
Okay.
And 3G and 4G was taking off. And in the last 6 months, we've seen that accelerate because of the price war that's happening in the market. And a very large chunk of our users today are actually 4G. And our bet in Jan this year was that if we fast forward 2 years, where's the world going to be? If we have 100 million active 4G customers in a market like India, what does the world look like? It's a very different world. So we really believe we have to invest in sight and sound, which is why we're launching things like video calling, and you'll see us focus heavily on photos and videos and double down on this path in 2017 too.
So very interestingly actually, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, your one and only acquisition so far was a company called Zip that was actually doing voice over internet protocol about 2 years back?
Jan 15, yeah.
Okay, so about
almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years back.
Yeah.
So this was something that you were driving into the vision of Hike even back then?
Yeah, so voice calling has been around for a while in Hike. This is us building video calling, taking it to the next step. And you can expect us to launch more things around photos and videos because we do believe that sooner or later, you're going to have 100 million active 4G customers. If it's not next year, it's going to be next to next year. Consumer tech disruption always happens top-down, which means that every decade or so, a new technology comes up that companies like us spot and can build a step-jump consumer experience on the technology. The problem is early on, the technology is very expensive, but over time, like with any tech, it becomes cheaper. When that new step-jump consumer experience becomes cheaper, disruption happens because it's so much better than the older current paradigm. We believe 4G is that disruptive. So you'll see us invest heavily in this sort of
in this space.
Direction.
And what about the other alphabet soup that's become very popular, ML, machine learning, and AI, artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
How keenly focused are you on that?
We started working on
Bots
it.
is another one.
So 2 parts, machine learning and bots. We begun investing in machine learning 6 months back. You can already see it in some parts of the application. A small idea is we have 10,000 stickers in the app. Let's say I'm chatting with you on Hike, and we're chatting and I want to send you a sticker. Sometimes I don't know.
Which one?
Yeah, and how do you find them?
Yeah.
So if you send me a sticker, we understand the context of the stickers exchanged back and forth. And if you tap on the sticker inside the conversation, we'll recommend you the top 10 stickers based on what you like and what the conversation is. This is early signs of machine learning in the application, really wrapping Hike around you and making your life a lot easier. You'll see us do more of this across the application going forward. I'm not a big believer of bots. I think it's the worst way to use services. And if I were to ask you, hey, what's the best bot you've used in the last 6 months, you can't give me an answer.
Okay.
But if I asked you, hey, what's the coolest app you used, you probably have an answer.
Yes.
Bots are still very, very early on. I think it's that new cool fad that's sort of there in the market, but in the long term, once the AI is there, bots will play a role. We really do believe that apps are like CDs. And CDs became obsolete very fast when the internet came on the desktop, and one CD simply became one more tab in a browser. And people spend most of their time on a desktop in a browser today. Docs have moved, mail has moved, everything's moved. The same thing's happening in mobile. If apps are like CDs, what's the new runtime? We believe apps will simply become one contact in the address book inside our messaging application because people already spend so much time in a messaging app today. We did this 2 years back. Today we have news that we deliver on Hike. And 70% of our users use news on a weekly basis. They browse through 1.5 to 2 billion stories a month on the platform, potentially making Hike one of the biggest news apps in the country. So we can see this model working very, very well where one more app becomes a contact in the address book, and more importantly for a billion-first mobile populace, it just makes the internet very simple. And most phones don't have space for more than 4 to 6 apps in a market like India, so it's doubly more useful. So that's sort of where the company is headed.
All right. And in terms of developing all of this, is it happening largely in-house with your team, or are you actively looking to actually partner with other interesting startups or smaller teams out there that are building some of these niches, or are you from the school of thought that you want to do everything ground up inside Hike?
No, I think the reason we raised so much capital from such great partners was because the disadvantage that every Indian startup has is that time is against us. The market's a couple of years behind and it's catching up, which means that whatever we've been doing this year has been to buy time. Bringing this capital on board, bringing partners like Tencent and Foxconn on board is buying us a couple of years. And with this capital and the valuation that we have, don't be surprised if in the next 6 months to 9 months, you'll see us pick up some companies, some very young, smart entrepreneurial teams who can own pieces of this vision and build them out. We haven't made any so far. I think next year you'll see us sort of focus more on this part. Yeah.
Because you realize perhaps that everything can't be done in-house. You have a team of about 250 people.
Which is small.
Which is small for the magnitude of work that you're rolling out and the kind of technology that you want to roll out as well.
Yeah, 250 is very small. Delhi, Bangalore, two places. Our goal is can we get to 400-500 in a couple of years. But my guess is hiring talent is just difficult here. There's so much competition, and more importantly, this is the first internet wave that we've seen in this country.
Correct.
And I love working with entrepreneurial people who just get it and can do stuff based on like a problem statement. And so we do look to, potentially speaking, grow inorganically if we can find the right teams who understand our vision. So I think time will tell if we can find those teams.
All right. So let's open it up for questions. I think there are mics in the audience. If you can put your hand up and stand so that we can see you. Yeah, sir. Come. So just introduce yourself and ask
Hi,
your
Kavin.
question.
This is Akash. Regarding the acquisitions earlier this morning, we read about Hike acquiring Creo. With you working towards building a product which is messaging as platform, how does this new acquisition help you?
So first of all, we've actually not acquired the company. I'm not sure where that's come from. I'm a personal investor in the company for a long time, and I've been guiding the Creo guys for some time. Our bet in Hike is different. We really believe messaging will become the new OS. So you'll see us launch a platform next year on messaging itself, but that's very, very different from what Creo is doing. So, yeah.
But are you hoping that if you did partner with, and Foxconn is that sort of partner who builds out smartphones, that how much would it help Hike's case to be bundled into the phone itself? And are you actively working towards that?
We have great preload deals with Micromax and Kavin and Lava, but they don't really account to much. That's a complementary growth that we have because these apps, these phones come loaded with junk. There's 16, 20 preloaded apps and you're one of them, and so the retention's not very good. Also, we release a version of the app every month. And when we work with phone partners, it takes 6 months to launch to the market, or 3 months, which means they're already 3 or 6 versions behind. It's not good for us.
Doesn't make sense.
So we don't focus much on that. We just focus on the App Store market right now.
All right. And how do you draw in the users? How do you increase the way people can discover Hike? How do you go out and, how will you go from 100 million to 200 million and then 300 and 400?
Yeah, first of all, the market has to grow. It's still very small. Second of all, we add somewhere between 100 to 200,000 customers organically every day, today.
All right.
So the app is growing organically, but the market has to grow. Our worry is that we have started hitting parts of the market that don't really comfortably use the internet. These last 80, 90 million people are using less than 100 MB a month, and are these accidental users? Are they beginners? What are they? Who are they, right? So the mix of the market has to get better. Our guess is 1 to 2 years from now, it will get better. That's the bet.
How much of your time, Kavin, do you spend personally trying to understand the new internet users? Do you go out there into the tier 2, tier 3 cities, villages, try and have conversations, see how they're using their smartphones? Have you ever done that?
Yeah, multiple times. And we do 2 things. One is we go out, we're trying to find more and more time for that. It's very, very useful because when so we do 2 things. One is we call users in,
Okay.
and that's great, but they're different in the office. You have to go into their environment and see how they're like. And that's how we got the idea for Hidden Mode. That's how we got the idea for stickers. That's how we were building all this news and everything else, because we realized that, my God, the lives of these people are so different from people like us. I think the only way to be successful in this country is to go and do that. So we do that quite often.
All right. Yeah. More questions? Yes, sir.
We have seen Facebook or other WhatsApp, they are trying to engage logistics or booking like Uber or Ola into it. So when we can see something in Hike that sort of, or other logistics or possibility of functionality in terms of booking something from Hike itself.
So there's Zomato's, Book My Show. I mean, it's the entire legion of these companies.
Yeah, look, I think it's in 2016, it's obvious that this will happen. The question is when, not if. Our guess is sometime end of next year, you'll see more of us open the platform to more people so they can build on Hike. People forget that today Hike is by far the largest internet company by active users in this country. So we have a lot of distribution. The question that we're asking is, how do we tastefully open up the platform so developers can build very easily, and more importantly, consumers do not get spammed. That takes time to build, so we're taking our time with that.
All right. More questions? I also heard you say that you're the largest internet company by active users.
Yep.
Right? But you're not revealing the numbers on that.
Soon.
Soon.
We we believe it's a very big competitive advantage because one of the reasons why we've done well in the last 3-4 years is because we've laid very low.
All
We've
right.
been very, very low key in building the business, and we just want to keep it that way. I think it's important for us because we are up against some very, very big competitors. So sooner or later, we will announce the numbers. Again, it's a matter of when, not if, but not today.
All right, not today. So I'm going to wind up. Okay, there's one question there, and then I'll have,
Kevin, would you be, when you're opening the platform, would you be open to specific niche applications, B2B also?
Such as?
So there is a B2B application which my wife's built, which is in the real estate space. It's built on WhatsApp, but can definitely get ported onto a Hike kind of platform as a base.
Look, eventually you can build anything on the platform, but just remember that our audience is 15 to 24. So you got to build on the platform eventually with that in mind. So will a real estate B2B app make a lot of sense on the platform? Maybe not.
Yeah, got it.
all right. Okay.
Hi Kavin, Arvind here. I really like the sticker part of Hike. Thank you for that. My question is, what are your plans for monetizing your business? Thank you.
So here's how we look at this. And people ask us, are you mad not trying to monetize your business very early on? The consumer market value chain has 3 parts: suppliers, distributors, and consumers. To make an outside share of profit in this value chain, you got to either monopolize one piece of the puzzle, like Intel and Windows did sort of back in the day, or verticalize 2 out of these 3 parts. And if you look at the pre-internet era, Newspapers, book publishers, taxis always own distribution and integrated backwards into supply because the transaction cost to consumers was very high. If you're going to spend $1 buying my paper, the paper has to be very valuable, so people naturally speaking integrate backwards. In the internet space, the transaction cost to consumers is free, which allows businesses like us with very low burn to aggregate forwards, which over time drives more time spent and engagement in the application, which then converts into a two-sided business model. Consumers transact with merchants, or merchants sponsor back to consumers. And if you look at the world globally, there are these two business models that have been adopted across all businesses. The Western social networks do the latter, the sponsorship, the ads. The Eastern guys like Tencent do transactions. Both models work. Facebook just made $2 billion of profit last quarter. Tencent makes almost $6 billion a year in net profit in transactions. So business models have been proven. The question is, how do we adapt these to a market like India once we have enough scale?
Okay. I'm just going to come in here, and I know we need to wind up, but I have to ask you this. So just playing devil's advocate, but in this market, so you have the Facebook on one side, and you have WeChat, but then you also have the very precariously placed Twitter, you know? Same philosophy, we'll monetize at a later point. They even listed, didn't have a monetization plan. There were some buyers, there aren't even any buyers now. What happens if you find yourself in a Twitter-ish predicament, or how do you prevent yourself from getting into that predicament?
Twitter's problem is not monetization, it's engagement. Twitter's engagement is tiny, their user growth is flat. So they have a fundamental product problem. We realize that, which is why we say for the next 2-3 years, all we want to do is build a phenomenal product that people fall in love with, which has high engagement. If you can do that, you're fine.
All right, I hope, Kavin, everything is fine.
Thanks
And
a
we
lot,
are
Syna.
back here again in a couple of years at NPC and talking about a bigger, more wonderful success story for Hike.
Thanks a lot, Syna.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So much.
Thank you.